finally good to have a standard definition of SD-WAN. I just felt like a lot of the vendors out there had lost their way along in really understanding what SD-WAN really is. So great job on MEF's part to actually come up with some standard definitions around it. All right. Let me make sure. All right. Okay. So earlier this morning, I was just thinking about one of the comments a friend had made. About it took radio about 38 years to build 50 million subscribers or users, and it took 19 days for Pokemon Go to create the same 50 million users out there. I mean, that's really the drive in terms of scale, speed, and customer experience. Those carriers are going to have to drive into the industry for our customers and our businesses that we support. Now, having said that, right, talking about customer experience, OVM had a study out there which said 96% of carriers indicated that their top business challenge is going to be around delivering a very personalized customer experience. Yet we see today that telecom services are being ordered and delivered just as they were being done 20 years back. Think about it. 20 years back, Windows 98 was launched. Google hired its first employee. I mean, these companies have leveraged the power and the speed of software to be able to drive disruption in the industry, to drive agility and be more adaptive in the market. And thankfully, it has been the opportunity for network to leverage the power of software and drive transformation. It's finally cool to be a network engineer again. Now, what is driving this need, right? We're seeing rapid change in network consumption and demand. We're seeing rapid adoption of technology in the market. We're seeing, from latency to bandwidth to quality of service to security, all varying characteristics of these from the network standpoint being driven by varying users and application demands in the market, right? There is significant variability from that standpoint. Now, having said that, right, some of the use cases, right, we see from our customers already coming to us is like, hey, I have these environmental sensors that require really low bandwidth, require high reliability. I have robots in my manufacturing facility requiring less than 10 milliseconds of latency. I have I'm developing this holographic communication model. I'm using AR for creating training modules. I'm using 8K cameras to actually do quality inspection of my products. This is all driving significant variability in terms of the network demands and expectations. Customers are coming back to us. We are at the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution. Now, to drive the scale and speed, right, if we're just going to consider ourselves as just a pipe, commoditization, price compression, these are all challenges we are going to continue facing. Which is why, right, I think Pascal, even in his presentation, talked about that value stack that we need to create on top. It is so critical for us to start partnering across carriers, across technology partners and vendors to create that value-added capability and services for our customers. And ultimately, right, our goal is really to drive an adaptive network where the network is a sensor which dynamically adapts to the changing application and user needs. Now, we talked about the fourth industrial revolution. Let's talk about 5G and how that is enabling that, right? Now, 1G was about voice, 2G was about voice and text, 3G was about voice, text, and data, and then 4G, we were able to now run videos and over the network, and 5G, it's at a point where 5G is going to drive unimaginable use cases and transformation in the industry. Now, having said that, right, there are two key aspects, right? You think about what 5G does. 1 gig of throughput delivered wirelessly to you. What does that mean to our enterprise and business customers, right? Now they have the ability to actually have a 1 gig throughput as an access at their locations delivered in a matter of hours versus waiting for multiple weeks and sometimes months as well. The second aspect, right, about this is the low latency. This is really going to transform the way about how enterprises and business customers are going to adapt to critical and massive IoT deployments, enabling their digital transformation as well. Now, not just that, but 5G leverages virtualization, and with the power of software-defined networking now, you're able to create specific network slices which cater to the end-to-end application service level requirements. As an example, right, you could actually have the same radio service low power and low bandwidth need for a specific sensor sitting within your environment, say your water heater or your water meter at your home. But the same radio could also deliver a high capacity, low latency network for potentially an autonomous vehicle, which is trying to essentially, from a self-driving perspective, navigating in real time. The other aspect about 5G is, right, now with 5G also brings a greater densification. So you have these radio nodes much closer to your locations. It also enables an architecture where not only is the network reliable, secure, providing a high throughput, low latency, but because of that, you potentially could leverage this as a replacement of your traditional LAN and wireless LAN infrastructures at your businesses or enterprise customers. With greater densification further, you're able to now move your virtualization, your compute capacity closer to your enterprise and business customers, which effectively is what MEC is all about, where, for example, for AR applications, now you're able to actually have a lot of the processing happening much closer to the customer locations who have those low latency requirements. Talking about the software-defined services and how do we embark on this journey in delivering these services to our customers. And there are multiple approaches we have seen in the industry, right? So we've seen some of them take a product approach, which is really, reselling some software-defined product and not really adding much value beyond that. There's limited integration within their own OSS, BSS stack. There's limited automation within the product itself. But it's good to get started on that, because a lot of, in some cases, we see providers learning from that experience from customers. It is risky because if you choose the wrong product to take to market, essentially you're already behind. The second approach we see providers take is the platform-based approach, right? Where essentially they take up specific use cases or pre-packaged solutions, involve some level of orchestration and automation as part of the service. But even in this case, right, they are assuming what the customers need and going and deploying these specific platform-based, taking this platform-based approach. A bit of a risky proposition again, because as we're seeing the needs and demands of customers constantly changing and varying, it's a risky aspect in terms of creating these very pre-packaged solutions in the market. The third aspect is the integrated ecosystem, right? So in this case, the approach we have taken is we want the customers to really define what their business requirements are. We want customers to define how they want to consume these services. We want customers to define what their experience needs to be as part of the service. And as a result of that, right, what we've built is essentially leveraging a complex advanced orchestration capability with a multi-platform capability, giving customers flexibility to basically develop the right product and solution that caters to their specific need and requirement. Creating really an open hardware, an open software, an open platform, an open network type capability, bringing in orchestration with some self-healing capabilities as well. Now, when we talk about closed loop assurance and self-healing with orchestration, we're not just talking about, hey, your VNF goes down within a certain virtualized platform. You have the ability to learn that and go essentially reinstantiate it, right? I mean, that's at the base level. But when we talk about self-healing capability, right, one of the key aspects is to how do we understand, how do we have visibility from the user to the application, from the user experience standpoint and how the application is performing, and be able to dynamically make changes within your network to ensure the integrity of that experience from the user to the application is being maintained. And those are some of the enhancements and capabilities we further drive into our integrated ecosystem. As an example, we recently had done a demo at Cisco Live where we had an application performance management platform learn from a user context standpoint where a user would come into a kiosk, would press, and he would log in, and we would immediately know through the transaction that this specific user is logged in, and we want to now prioritize that specific user's traffic. And that was done all dynamically, where we could actually learn that user's that user context in real time and be able to drive changes within the network. Now, in building out the integrated ecosystem, of course, we came across a lot of challenges as well, right? I mean, we've deployed this to a lot of our customers today, but as we were building out these services, some of the lessons, right? What we expected is the VNF vendors and partners we're working with are going to give us a cloud scale native product and solution that we can then integrate into our ecosystem. But that was not the case always, right? In fact, in many cases, we literally found, the VNF vendors and partners were just taking their appliances and porting that code over to a VNF. Not caring as much for cloud scalability, performance, not caring for dynamic levers for high availability, geo-redundancy, not giving us hooks for self-healing capabilities. So these were some of the challenges, and we had to essentially create our own interfaces as we are working with them. Thankfully, again, a lot of progress on the MEF side as well, right? We are trying to push towards standardization, but there was the learning process in terms of how the partners and vendors are adapting to these standards. The second thing was around our customers expect more an end-to-end service, an end-to-end capability, right? Which involves effectively taking multiple products, multiple VNFs, putting them together, creating a service chain out of it, and delivering an end-to-end service to our customer. This involves interoperability between these VNFs. Lack of standards around interoperability between the VNF vendors also effectively was a bit of a challenge. How do we assure performance, security for these service chains regardless of which platform we are delivering it on? So there's some work, again, we had to create more of an over-the-top methodology. We had to, once we learned from what needs to be done to validate this, we build automation around it so we can accelerate our speed to start creating these service chains for our customers. The third aspect was, right, we had to, of course, integrate these services and service chains with our orchestration platform, our assurance platform, our OSS stack, BSS stack. And again, while there were standards, the lack of adoption of these standards when it came to data models or whether it was standard API interfaces, we didn't see consistency across our partners and vendors as well. So that essentially required us to create that abstraction layer and create our own service adapters as a result of trying to mask the variability we saw across these VNF vendors and really keep it simple from a consumption standpoint for our customers. Now, Again, I think, in the last presentation, Pascal had mentioned about all the different initiatives. Verizon is a very key part of that, driving towards standardization. The MEF 3.0 is definitely giving us the right framework towards driving that standardization across the industry and actually pushing for it. Now, in terms of the integrated ecosystem, it doesn't stop there in terms of just the VNF vendors and technology partners we work with, but also cross-carrier integration becomes very critical too, because at the end of the day, we as a global service provider are delivering services for our customers globally, end-to-end, across multi-cloud environments, regardless of where the users are. So one of the, again, leveraging the MEF LSO standards, back at least when they were being developed, we actually were a key part of that, and we leveraged those standards to work with Colt, where we wanted to essentially drive carrier-to-carrier federation so that we can actually dynamically meet the application needs of the global user. And so one of the examples we did there was in a production, this is in an actual production environment, we had our respective orchestration platforms talk to each other and be able to request for specific Ethernet bandwidth and port upgrades on demand in real time. And one of the use case we used was an actual video conference where we kind of simulated some sort of traffic conditions and automatically were able to request across each other's network to be able to request the right network resources so that the quality of the video now further improves based on in real time. So this is a key part. I think this is one aspect of where carriers really need to be coming together in terms of driving more and more standardization and adaptation of being able to instrument changes across each other's network to really drive a common global consistent experience for our enterprise and business customers. But at the end of the day, it's just, again, it's not just about APIs and interfaces, right? Yes, there's a lot of work in terms of standardization happening north-south between carriers and VNF vendors and partners, orchestration platforms. We see, I think there's still more work to happen east-west, right? Especially when you have, I think MEF has definitely done a lot of work in that space where multiple orchestration platforms should be able to talk to each other as well. But beyond that, right? We don't live in a greenfield environment. We have to care for a brownfield environment, right? There are challenges associated with that. There's limited, at least when in some of the partnerships we've had, limited progress the partners have made in terms of caring for the true life cycle of the solution and the service. Especially in terms of the caring for the ITIL processes for the entire life cycle of that specific service. But beyond that also, right, service levels. How do we care for changing service levels, for changing application needs, and what does that do to the interoperability and the integration between these multiple sets? But in terms of interoperability again, right, and integration, we have the technology partners, we have the carrier ecosystem, but beyond that, now with more and more data available to us, we have an understanding of what a user context is, we have understanding of what an application context is, we have understanding of what a transaction context is, what a carrier context is, and being able to assimilate this data, drive deeper analytics, and then be able to drive more dynamic and adaptive decisions into the network is really where we should be heading to. And I believe there is definitely more work over there. Like I said, we've started on the journey. We've done a simple proof of concept and really looking to drive more adaptiveness into the network as a result of that. Finally, just like to say, right, again, I do strongly believe MEF 3.0 does give a very strong basis and foundation for caring for the complex nature of driving software-defined networking and virtualization into our networking space, and really driving the business outcomes for ultimately our customers. But three key takeaways, right? Let's continue on innovating around the virtualized and software-defined solution, creating the right API standards and interfaces across technology partners, carriers, other platforms, application visibility platforms, and things of that nature. So continue to innovate. Second is continue to invest in automation, end-to-end service automation, because ultimately that's what's going to drive your customer experience in terms of how they are able to quickly adapt your services and be able to drive a more dynamic behavior. Innovate, invest, and the third is influence. Let's influence the fourth industrial revolution by driving a much superior network, creating value. Especially 5G holds a significant promise in terms of really giving us that ecosystem where we can drive more enhanced capabilities and services into the network as well. All right, that's all I had for you guys today. Thank you very much for the time.